Where is the outrage for Kamala Harris abusing her power to use Vladimir Zelensky to better her campaign? So check this article out. House Oversight Committee investigates Zelensky's taxpayer-funded trip to Pennsylvania. This should infuriate people. And this is exactly why people are so fed up with sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And it's nothing against Vladimir Zelensky. Well, maybe. I'm beginning to not like the guy. It's nothing, I'm not some Putin sympathizer. I don't really care. What bothers me the most is millions of people dying in a border dispute. And we're paying for it. That's what I have a problem with. I have a problem with my tax dollars going to this complete carnage over there in Ukraine, where an entire population of people, an entire country is being depopulated because of a war that we're funding and we're facilitating. It's no different than me having a problem with my tax dollars going to abortion. This is why the American people are so fed up with this federal government and the way that it spends our money. And we have literally no say in the matter. We have no say in the matter whatsoever. And this is exactly what needs to happen. Bring his ass in front of Congress and question him in front of the American people. Why did you come down to America weeks before an election? This is unheard of, folks. So the committee is asking questions surrounding the Biden-Harris administration's alleged use of taxpayer-funded resources to fly Zelensky to the state, Fox News reported on Wednesday. In a press release, the committee said Chairman James Comer is, quote, seeking documents from the White House, Department of Defense, and Department of Justice regarding the Biden-Harris administration's misuse of government resources that allowed Zelensky to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. If it's election interference for Donald Trump to do it and he gets impeached, why is it not election interference when these people do it? You guys notice something? I'm pretty sure that says U.S. Air Force, which means our tax dollars flew this guy down here in this giant plane, looks like a C-130 of some sort, so that he can go to Pennsylvania and sign bombs for the war and to essentially campaign for Kamala Harris. So let's get a little bit more into this. So in 2019, the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives impeached President Donald Trump for abuse of power under the theory that he attempted to use a foreign leader, Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, to benefit his 2020 presidential campaign, despite a lack of any evidence of wrongdoing on the part of President Trump. The Biden-Harris administration recently flew the same foreign leader, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, on an American taxpayer-funded flight to Pennsylvania, a battleground state in the upcoming 2024 presidential election, which has been described as the, quote, trickiest battleground for Vice President Kamala Harris to win. The committee seeks to determine whether the Biden-Harris administration attempted to use a foreign leader to benefit Vice President Harris's presidential campaign and, if so, necessarily committed to an abuse of power, wrote Chairman Comer. President Zelensky's itinerary included a stop in Pennsylvania to meet with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro on September 22nd. The New Yorker published an interview with President Zelensky in which he made multiple critical comments about the Trump-Vance ticket. As Breitbart noted, Trump has said he will end the war between Russia and Ukraine as president-elect. I want to get Russia to settle up with Ukraine and stop this. Millions of people being killed, far greater than the number you read about. But I want to get that done before I even take office. I want to get that done as president-elect because it has to be solved. Too many people dying. Too many cities are just in rubble right now. You look at the cultures just being destroyed. So true, man. This is the problem I have with the war. I don't really care about a place where nobody can point out on a map. When did Democrats become the party of war? Isn't that crazy? When I was a Democrat, the fact of us cheering for a foreign leader to come to Pennsylvania and sign bombs that we're going to be paying for to send back over there to bomb a bunch of people, You know, Democrats are all worried about Israel and this pager bombing. They're so worried about the Palestinians being bombed. Why don't they care when Russia bombs a bunch of Ukrainians? They just don't care. They just want the war to go on in perpetuity. It's all fake. It is a fake outrage from Democrats all the time. This is one of the reasons why I left the party. It's all fake. They use stuff as political issues. They don't actually care about women's rights. They don't actually care about abortion. They just care about using abortion as a political issue. In June, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is campaigning against Trump for the White House in 2024, promised another $1.5 billion in direct American aid for Ukraine, Breitbart News reported. The article noted, quote, since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the United States has sent more than $3.2 billion in humanitarian aid and nearly $1.5 billion to help Ukraine's energy sector. A recent poll showed Trump and Harris are tied in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, and Trump is leading in Georgia, according to Breitbart News. Now, not to get on the roller coaster, but the polls are looking pretty good for Donald Trump right now, but we know how it goes. It goes up and down, up and down. That's why I do not get into polls on the show, because I just don't like reading polls. In fact, the polls are so wrong all the time. Frankly, I don't even know why us as content creators and radio hosts and so on and so forth, I don't even know why we read the polls. They're so wrong all the time. And so I don't do them on the show because I think it gives a fake notion that Trump is winning, and so people get lethargic. And then on the other hand, it creates fake negativity if Donald Trump is down on the polls. So I just don't do it. Most of the time, the polls aren't right. Not most of the time, pretty much all the time, the polls aren't right. But I digress. I think this is just disgusting. This should piss people off to no end. How we can spend hundreds of billions of dollars on a war in Ukraine, but we can't fix our own homeless crisis here in the United States. Which, by the way, we actually calculated this on one show. We can fix the homeless crisis in America for $40 billion. So with the amount of money we've sent over to Ukraine, we could have solved our homelessness crisis in the entire country 4 times over. And on that same show, we went into how much medication, how many prescription medications it could buy for the American people. Essentially, it could buy all the prescriptions for the American people for like 2 or 3 years. It could take care of all of the medical bills for the American people. Like crazy stuff like that. And that is just with the money we sent to Ukraine. I mean, we're not talking about all the money we send to the Paris Climate Accord, all the money we send to the UN to defend European countries and nations. And I think Donald Trump criticizes the Russia-Ukraine war and the United Nations, or the EU, pretty fairly. When Donald Trump was in office, he really forced the EU to put up its side of the bargain, which was, hey, man, why do we have to sit and pay all this money to defend your nations when all this stuff is happening on your border? But yet you put up a small percentage. And because he did that, they actually started paying more money towards their military defense. And it's a good thing that he did. He must have been able to send something, because if he didn't, they wouldn't have had the money to send to Ukraine for Ukraine to defend themselves the way they have. So this just came out today. Donald Trump posted this tweet, this message from Zelensky today. This is, I guess, a message from Zelensky to Donald Trump. It says, would you please be so kind to pass this message from President Zelensky to President Trump? It says, Dear Donald, I hope you're doing well. I recall our recent phone call. It was really good. All of us in Ukraine want to end this war with a just peace. And we know that without America, this is impossible to achieve. That's why we have to strive to understand each other and remain in close contact. Days ago, we requested a meeting with you, and I really want to hear your thoughts directly and firsthand. You know, I always speak with the great respect about everything connected to you, and that's how it should be. I can be in New York on Friday, which would be a good time to meet. I believe it's important for us to have a personal contact and understand each other 100%. Let me know if you are in the city at the time. I would really like for our meeting to take place as part of our efforts to help us end this war in a just way. Sincerely, Vladimir. I just don't know if I like this guy, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was a mediocre comedian. He gets all this, he goes from a mediocre comedian to the most important, most famous person in the world. And he comes to Pennsylvania to sign bombs, to rag on Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, talking about how J.D. Vance needs to read and learn more about World War II. Well, maybe Zelensky should read a little bit more about World War II. Because if he would have, he would know that visiting the United States weeks before an election and campaigning for a certain candidate is unprecedented. Even Winston Churchill, like I said, never visited the United States during the war, even though he knew the United States was vital to the war efforts during World War II. But you didn't see Winston Churchill flying to Pennsylvania and signing bombs on behalf of Kamala Harris in her campaign. It pisses me off, man. So I don't really know if I like the dude, but I mean, that's beyond the point. It really doesn't even matter. I just want people to stop dying in this war. And what pisses me off the most is that people are even considering voting for this for another 4 years. As if the last 4 years didn't even happen. For 4 years, I've been listening to people complain about grocery prices, and Democrats, mind you. I just had a colleague of mine come up to me the other day and complain about how his son can't buy a house because the interest rates are so high and the economy's so bad. I'm like, do you not connect the dots? Can you not see why things are so bad and when they started getting bad? It's not a coincidence that all this stuff went to hell the moment Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got into office. In fact, before the election, during 2020, I warned everybody that it would be this bad. Not because I could predict that, the high inflation, not because I could make any type of prediction. It's just common sense. Democrats have awful policies. Their policies are opposite of what's required for a striving nation and a striving economy. They want bigger government, more spending, more government programs, more government overreach. I mean, less transparency. They don't see the commander-in-chief, the president, as a third branch of office. They see the president as a figurehead. But what's really running the country is the oligarchy. And just so long as it's the Democrat oligarchy, they're fine. These people were going to elect a man that they knew had dementia as president of the United States. Clearly, these people are not rational thinkers. They don't think rationally, and all this is because Trump derangement syndrome. I think that's the literal definition of TDS, is it causes people to act irrationally. It removes all critical thought. But I hope they get to the bottom of this Zelensky thing. They need to drag his ass in front of Congress, in front of the American people, and ask him, what the hell were you thinking coming down to our country weeks before a pivotal election and sit and talk crap about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance? Clearly what he was saying, he was given a script to read, probably on the flight down here, about what to say. This stuff isn't natural. Everything is scripted with the Kamala Harris campaign, and I guarantee you they gave him a list of things to say, essentially trying to convince Pennsylvanians, which is a key swing state, that yes, you should vote for Kamala Harris so that Ukraine can win the war. Mind you, this is a war that is never going to end. Russia can fight this war indefinitely, forever. Ukraine cannot. They're literally running out of bodies. They have extinguished their entire younger generation in Ukraine. Their draft age now is like 40 years old. This is not something that should continue on, and the fact that my tax dollars are facilitating this makes me ill, and it infuriates me. And it should infuriate everybody else, because you know that if Kamala Harris, part of her campaign is to promise another $1.5 billion to Ukraine, this war is never going to end. The Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign, it's not just a campaign of lies and deception, but it is a reminder of the last 4 years of the global chaos that's been created. The chaos on our southern border, oh, by the way, which Kamala Harris says she's going to go visit now, 5 weeks before the election. And it's just a continuation of the same crap. Nothing is going to change during a Kamala Harris administration. Why? Because it's not Kamala Harris running the country. We don't know who's running our country. It's the same 4 or 5 people that are running the country right now, because clearly Joe Biden's not running the country. We don't even know where the guy is. His wife, Dr. Jill Biden, which was just running a cabinet meeting for Joe Biden the other day. So it's clear that Joe Biden is not running this country. It is the Democrat oligarchy, the same people that are going to be running the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz administration. So things are not going to get better. They're not going to stay the same. They're going to get worse. And I don't know about you, but we are on the brink of World War III. And when you have Vladimir Putin essentially saying, listen, if you give these long-range missiles to Ukraine, he's going to see that as an act of war, which I really don't blame the guy for the simple fact that that's no different if Vladimir Putin were to put long-range missiles on the southern border of the United States. I don't think we would allow that either. So here we are on the brink of World War III. You have all this global chaos, and all of this started under the Biden administration. And they expect people to vote for it again? I don't believe it, man. I don't believe it. And I want to get into one more crazy thing. Speaking of foreign influence in the election, the Democrat Party leftists are actually working in tandem, partnering with Iran to win the 2024 election for Kamala Harris. You think that sounds crazy, but it's true, man. Check this out. This is from the National Pulse. So you guys remember when the Pakistani national was tied to Iran? Matt Gaetz came out a few days ago on his podcast and said that a whistleblower from the Department of Defense essentially came out and revealed that Iran is sending out assassination teams of Donald Trump, plotting to assassinate Trump. So this is that article right here. This came out, this actually came out on August 7th. So Pakistani national tied to Iran, charged with plotting to assassinate Trump. Federal prosecutors alleged the man named Asaf Merchant flew to the United States from Pakistan with the intention of hiring hitmen to carry out an attack on Trump and other U.S. lawmakers. Prior to the trip, the suspect is believed to have spent extensive time in the Islamic Republic of Iran. So here we go with the Iran stuff again. So Merchant's arrest, which occurred last month, became public after criminal filings unsealed in a New York federal court on Tuesday. The complaint against Merchant does not mention Trump by name. However, an ABC News report confirms that the America First leader was the plot's intended target. So we know that Iran is out there trying to kill, obviously, Donald Trump because of Qasem Soleimani. He killed their terrorist leader. But what's crazy is it says, and other public officials. Do you think J.D. Vance would be considered a target? I would probably guess so. So this is what's crazy. So this is where I say the Democrats are actively working and partnering with Iran to try and not just help Kamala Harris win the election, but apparently to help these assassination teams, which we know are in the United States because of an open southern border. They're trying to help the Iranian assassination teams assassinate public officials like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. Check this out. So far-left blogger publishes Iranian-hacked dossier on J.D. Vance, doxing his social security number, physical addresses, cell numbers, and emails. Why would this Democrat do that? What the hell is wrong with these people? They're literally doxing J.D. Vance, putting his social security number and addresses out there. For what? For these assassination teams that are lurking around the United States to track down J.D. Vance and kill him and murder him? These people, folks, they have lost their minds. They have become so deranged with TDS that they actively are working with Iran by publishing their hacked materials and doxing J.D. Vance and public officials. This is nuts, man. So far-left blogger Ken Klippenstein has published an internal campaign vetting dossier on the 2024 Republican Party vice presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Klippenstein, who previously worked as a journalist with The Intercept and far-left progressive commentary show The Young Turks, posted the material believed to have been hacked by the Islamic Republic of Iran on his Substack on Thursday. The National Post is choosing not to link the dossier, blah, 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 blah. The dossier published by Klippenstein contains a bevy of private information belonging to Vance, including his social security number, personal phone number, physical addresses, and private email addresses. Klippenstein made no effort to conceal any other private details and contact information for the vice presidential nominee, potentially constituting a threat to Vance and his family. Well, that seems pretty crazy considering we know for a fact there are Iranian assassin teams out there actively hunting for Donald Trump and other public officials. And this crazy-ass lady wants to post J.D. Vance's physical address and his emails, his social security number. What is wrong with these people, man? I'm telling you, folks, they have lost their freaking minds, man. While the materials do not appear to be the explosive expose alluded to some of the members of the corporate media who received the documents from Iranian agents who hacked the Trump campaign, the publishing of private and personal details is concerning. The American intelligence community has made it abundantly clear that there is a concerted effort by the Iranian Islamist regime aimed at assassinating President Trump in order to prevent him from retaking the White House. Folks, it should not be any more obvious to people whose team is on whose here. When you have the Iranian Islamic regime helping Kamala Harris by hacking Donald Trump's campaign and leaking the information and materials to the Biden-Harris campaign, that should tell you everything you need to know. It's pretty much Iran coming out and saying, yes, we want Kamala Harris to win. Most likely because they see Kamala Harris as their best bet for continuing all of their terroristic conduct that they've been committing since October 7th. And they're going to be able to continue doing that because the Democrats' philosophy to stopping the Middle Eastern violence is by paying them billions of dollars and allowing them to make hundreds of billions of dollars on oil revenue by relieving sanctions. Donald Trump had his foot on the throats of Iran, and he imposed some of the strongest sanctions Iran has ever seen in its existence, and Donald Trump almost bankrupted their asses. The Biden-Harris administration gets in the power and relieves all of those sanctions, allowing Iran to generate hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenue, and then shortly after we have the October 7th attack on Israel. So not only is Iran teaming up with the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz campaign by hacking Trump campaign material and leaking it to the leftist press, but now you have leftist bloggers and journalists doxing J.D. Vance, leaking his email addresses, his physical addresses, and phone numbers. I think it's pretty obvious who Iran wants to be president at this point. And if you thought that maybe Democrats were kind of rejecting the notion that we are by no means helping Iran, partnering with Iran to get Kamala Harris across the finish line, then how do you explain leftist Democrats doxing J.D. Vance by using hacked material from Iran? It's clear. You see the coalition here. And to speak more onto, you can tell a lot about a person by who their enemies are. I want people to know, I want people to realize who is endorsing Kamala Harris. This should be shocking to a lot of people. So you go down the list of endorsements. So far, Iran has obviously come out and made it perfectly clear that they want Kamala Harris to win this election. I don't think there's any confusion as to why. It's clear that Iran has benefited from a Biden-Harris administration and will continue benefiting from a Harris-Walz administration. So you got Iran hacking the Trump campaign and leaking the materials to the Biden-Harris campaign. I could probably consider that like an in-kind donation, maybe. Leaking hacked material from the Trump campaign. So you can call that an endorsement, right? All right, so we'll call that an endorsement. That is an in-kind contribution from Iran to Kamala Harris, the leaked material from the Trump campaign. So you got Iran. You have Vladimir Putin has came out just weeks ago and said that she wants Kamala Harris to win this election. I think it's pretty clear why. Because like I said before, no one has benefited more from a Biden-Harris administration than our enemies. And then you have Vladimir Zelensky coming out and pretty much campaigning for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania, signing bombs, right? And talking about how J.D. Vance doesn't know anything about war and needs to read about World War II and pretty much ragging on Donald Trump. So I think it's pretty clear who flew his ass down here so that he can campaign for Kamala Harris. That's pretty obvious. And hopefully by the investigation is done with, hopefully the investigation's done before the election so that everybody can see that the Kamala Harris campaign used taxpayer money to fly Vladimir Zelensky down here to campaign for her in Pennsylvania, in the swing state that she's losing in right now, by the way. But here's another endorsement that just came out. Kamala Harris has been endorsed by the IRS. I mean, I can't think of the worst group of people to be endorsed by. So Kamala Harris is endorsed by the IRS. She's getting hacked campaign material from Iran. She's been endorsed by Vladimir Putin a few weeks ago. And she has Vladimir Zelensky flown down here on taxpayer dollars on a U.S. Air Force jet to campaign for her in Pennsylvania. I mean, I don't know about you, but this is pretty revealing. It's pretty revealing on who's supporting Kamala Harris. Like, that's not exactly who I would want endorsing me. I certainly wouldn't want those endorsements public, but that's what we've got so far. If you pay attention, if you read into this, the last 2 weeks, she's been endorsed by Iran with the hack campaign materials, Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Zelensky, and just recently, the IRS. Well, why the hell is the IRS endorsing Kamala Harris? People hate the IRS. The IRS sucks. Okay, it's essentially legalized theft, what they're doing to people. And the IRS is taking our money, and they're spending it on stupid shit like bombs in Ukraine and putting tampons in boys' bathrooms and funding all these blue states that are going to hell because of Democrat policies. I mean, it's no wonder she's sinking in the polls. It's a freaking disaster. This campaign is a flipping disaster. And it is a campaign of lies and deception. Anybody that votes for this deserves it. But the rest of us do not. That's the problem I have. It'd be one thing if, the people that voted for Kamala Harris, they got the high prices, the high grocery prices, the high inflation, the crashing economy. Like, that would be their own fault. But the rest of us have to suffer too, man. That's what I don't like.